Hello, you lovely lot. I'm Josh, host of Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm just nipping in before this week's episode to give you two pieces of very exciting news. Number one, we are now on Patreon, so you can support the podcast however you can and you'll get loads of lovely goodies in return. There's three tiers. Tier 1 is Nuvian. For £2 a month, you'll get your name in the credits of every single Who Knew episode and video, because there's going to be other stuff coming to the channel very soon, which I'll announce later on. And on top of that, you'll get early access to podcasts and videos when I can provide it. In Tier 2, you're a DVD collector. So for £4 a month, you get all of that stuff, but you also get access to the Who Knew Discord server, where I'll be dropping early podcast guest announcements, behind the scenes stuff, exclusive content, and you'll just get to chat to other patrons about Doctor Who, and I'll be in there as well if you want to ask me anything, but God knows why you would. And not only that, you'll get 5% off all items at the Who Knew merch store. And Tier 3, you're a Corridor of Famer. For £6 a month, you get all of that other good stuff, but also you get the chance to record yourself asking a question for one of our guests for the bloody Twitter section, and I'll stick it in the podcast, and you'll be in there and you'll be immortalised in bloody Twitter forever. And if you don't want to do that, you'll just get a guaranteed question that you can ask a guest, and you'll get one of them every single series. On top of that, the discount for the Who Knew merch store is boosted up in that final tier to 15%. So if you want to support the podcast, obviously there is absolutely no obligation, and all of the episodes of Who Knew and all of the videos that I'm planning will go on here on the YouTube or on Spotify for free. You can still get all of that. This is just a little bonus thing if you want to support the podcast, because it really, really helps me out. And you may have heard me mention there, the Who Knew merch store. You may ask,
Josh, since when did Who Knew have a merch store?
Since right bloody now we do. Hopefully if my editing skills are up to scratch, you'll see a lovely selection of t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, even a little Who Knew sticker in a variety of different colours that you can purchase for yourself, your friends, your family, your dog, your nan, whoever you want. I don't care. So not only can you support the podcast on Patreon, you can get a little discount over there. Head over to the Who Knew merch store and you can rep us in public as well. You can plug the pod in person. So links to the Patreon and the merch store are in the description down below. You'll also find them on my Twitters and all of my socials. And as I said, thank you so much for all of your support so far. There is absolutely no obligation to do any of this. Like I said, all of this stuff is still going to be free. It's still going to be out there. I just really want to push this thing to bigger and better places, and this would really, really help me keep the lights on. So, big love, and enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am your host, as always, Josh Carr. And with me today, of course, I've got another fantastic guest, as I usually do. And we've got the one and only queen of the cult movies, the hostess with the mostess. It's Bunny Galore. How are you?
Hi, Josh. Look at you catch me with a stitch of makeup on. I'm just relaxing at home, you know, like I normally do, dressed like this.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, you all know what we're here for. We're here to talk about Doctor Who, which is a funny little show that we all know and love. and here we like to sit down and chat with wonderful people like Bunny and discuss the ins, the outs, the everythings about Doctor Who. So speaking of ins, how did you get into Doctor Who? How did you become a Doctor Who fan?
Well, Josh, isn't it strange to start with that we're in 2021 still at the moment? Isn't that crazy that we're talking about a TV show that's still relevant in 2021?
Yeah.
Because most of us, when we came to the show, unless you're very, very new and you're very young, we never dreamed in our wildest dreams that the show would still be on air at this point, let alone be the global institution that it is. It's so strange, isn't it? So I'm a lady of a certain age, and I'm glad I'm that age because I started watching in 1974 with Tom Baker. Became the Doctor.
Right.
So I was right. I was about 4 years old at the time. So I'm the perfect age for that whole Tom Baker golden era. That, I'm sure a lot of people were, but it just completely, cooked me from there. I've worked out lately, I think the first episode I saw, though, was the repeat of Planet of the Spiders. They showed, I think it's the day before episode 1 of Robot went out.
Right. Okay.
Because I have these hazy memories of John Pertwee, and it's only lately that because I was thinking, well, that's like a whole year beforehand. Why would I remember that Planet of the Spiders? Because I would have been very, very small, and obviously not. There's no repeats. This is the live version. And lately, I found out that repeated Planet of the Spiders the day before Robot, and I think that's why I obviously seen the regeneration. And Robot is still so important to me because in my head, the whole Tom Baker title sequence of the tunnel, I used to call as a child going down the giant robot's arm, like you're inside the arm because it's metal and it's round.
Yeah.
So but by that it shows how much I remembered that story and how much I was involved in that story. So yes, it was literally Tom Baker. I don't think I became what I'd call a real fan until the Key to Time season in '78. That was the first time I remember tuning in, not as a viewer that liked the show, as a hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. Well, if my maths is correct, that would make you around about 8 or 9 years old when that came out.
Yes, I was. So it's about 7 or 8.
It's always the prime age. Everyone that I speak to, it's always 8 or 9. I was 8 or 9 when I got into Doctor Who. But yeah, Robot is.
What's your secret number? When would you come into it?
Well, I'm a 2005 baby.
Oh wow! Okay. Well, that's magical. I'm so jealous of anybody that experienced the new show as kids. I mean, to have David Tennant as your Doctor as a kid is like how amazing would that have been?
Oh, it was incredible. It was absolutely, because I think I spoke in episode 1 with Clever Dick Films about sort of like the peak time of around about that second half of series 4 in 2008, where everyone was just talking about Doctor Who constantly. I'd go to school and everyone in the playground would talk about it, and then you get into lessons and your teachers would be talking about it, and then all of the parents would be talking about it in the playground. Like, it was the biggest thing on TV. So Doctor Who at the point you joined in, it's probably one of its other peaks.
Funny you should say that, because it is. I never thought in a million years you'd ever get to the heights of the late 70s again. Not that at the time you were just watching it as a something you loved. It wasn't like you were thinking like that. But obviously, because of the decline in the 80s and then in the 90s, looking back, you kind of go, oh, it's never going to get to that height ever. That would be impossible. So when the revival happened, and particularly when David Tennant took over, you just was like, this is witchcraft. What on earth's happening? Yeah. And it was so wonderful. I still remember going in. I think I remember going to the Brighton exhibition, which happened midway through series 1. And then I went back, I think, at the end of it. And the fact that you saw parents bringing their kids in, I still remember being in a bookshop somewhere in London and a child going past me and picking up a Doctor Who book or a toy or something. And I was just like, I never thought I'd see that again. Because up till like 2005, you thought it was, yes, it's a cult show and that it will have longevity because of that, but it will never become the family show again. It will never become that. It will always be the fondly remembered show. So it's just mind-blowing. And the end of series 4 is of the revival is probably my favorite, funny enough.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's definitely up there for me. I'm doing a big rewatch at the minute, and a couple of weeks ago I finished series 4, and oh my god, it's so fun. It's just Doctor Who, and I've been doing little reviews on Twitter, and everyone's been mocking me rightfully for the ridiculous number of 10 out of 10s that I've been dishing out during David's era, but I gave like 5 10 out of 10s in that series. Yeah. They're all just perfect stories. There's one little word that you said in there that I want to pick out.
Sure.
And it's cult, because as I mentioned before, you on your very own TV show, which is a very cool thing to say, you state yourself as the queen of the cult movies. So what is there a link in your mind to, obviously everyone always refers to the sort of cult nature of Doctor Who. Obviously you have this love for cult movies as well. Do you think they're sort of intertwined in a way? Do you think Doctor Who has sort of led you into cult movies, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think so. Although when I fell in love with Doctor Who, it was a very mainstream as it was in the noughties. I mean, it still is really. It's not. It hasn't really gone back to being cult because it still is a mainstream program. Yeah. Whatever you think of the current sort of production, it's still very much. Now it's happening now, so it only really becomes cult when it goes off air. Really stops becoming every day. Having said that, Doctor Who is always called a cult, and it's like calling Buffy a cult, and I think that's wrong, because that's Buffy's still very relevant, but then Buffy's now 20 years old, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's so long ago now. So I think maybe my view of it is skewed, but possibly because of all the mid-70s Philip Hinchcliffe Hammer stuff, I started getting into the Hammer horrors movies that were being shown on BBC Two. What I was watching those at that age, I don't know, for when in the 70s, because I was still quite young. But then I think also kids' TV in the late 70s was like a Hammer horror movie, but without the sex and without the blood. Like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd have Children of the Stones or something like that, which is utterly terrifying now, let alone when you're younger. So I think that led to the things that changed. I think when I became a teenager, they did 2 series, one on BBC 2, BBC 2 of all the Universal horror movies, with the show them back to back, 2 films a week on BBC 2. So you had Frankenstein and Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Dracula, all the sequels. That happened in 84. And also in 84, there was a series on Channel 4 called The Worst of Hollywood, which showed Plan 9 from Outer Space, Robot Monster, The Wild Women of Wongo, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Basically all the films that, like, 30 years later I'd end up hosting, but I fell in. It was the first time I'd seen a bad movie, as in bad acting, and it feels quite raw, and it feels quite much more visceral than a good movie in a way of that movie. And I think in the mid-80s I was kind of rebelling against like mainstream heteronormative cinema, and kind of to put a like glossier word on it, I was kind of rebelling against Top Gun and Dirty Dancing, and films that I do like now, but at the time was a little bit like America was very saccharine-y, really taking over cinema in UK, and it was all a little bit too glossy and a bit too not English, and I think I craved something more raw and alternative. And if I'm really honest, it's kind of the gay thing as well, because you kind of end up going away from the mainstream and finding things that are unloved, and you end up lifting them up because of their camp and silly values. No matter how, they can be really good things, but usually it's because they've got an element of they've been unloved and they've been kind of forgotten about. So, Baby Jane, Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, Baby Jane, which was a big hit in its day, a huge hit in its day, but become, sort of forgotten about. Or Mummy Dearest, Faye Dunaway got dreadful reviews to play Joan Crawford in Mummy Dearest, but that becomes a cult classic because people see it in different ways and get a kick out of it in some ways. So I think it's that. But I never thought it would come. I would be doing it like all these years later, that I'd be hosting the movies that I loved as a teenager. I never thought that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, how did that happen? How did that come about? Because I've seen some episodes and it's brilliant. I absolutely love watching it.
It is more about the movie. I'm kind of hosting. So it's a tradition from America that you would have, that started in the 1950s with a lady called Vampira, and she would sit there in a very slinky black dress like Morticia Addams from the Addams Family and go, and be very sort of, I want to drink blood, but I'm going to watch this movie. And it lasted a year, but in the LA circuit. But different people did it all around the country. So because they had what you'd call local TV, which we don't really have here. But the closest we used to have is the 60s and 70s. ITV would have its local stations, but it wasn't quite as maverick as I think is in America. So every city would have its own horror host, or big city would have its own horror host. Wow. It would usually be the weatherman putting on a Dracula cape and a bit of makeup and introducing the late night horror movie on a Friday night.
Right.
But I think they used to repeat them on the Saturday mornings for kids. Why? I don't know. But therefore the kids loved it as well. So they all became these little pockets of people would have, like that. You would have your own Doctor Who. You have your own horror host in America. And then more famously, Elvira came along in 1981. So she's celebrating her 40th anniversary this year. And she became the first crossover to mainstream pop culture, mainly because she's very funny, but also I think she's got a killer cleavage and a very 80s sexy image that, she's one with the big black beehive and the very low cut dress. Yeah. So they kind of rejigged the vampire character, long story, but for copyright reasons, they couldn't use the word vampire. Good for her. And I interviewed her once on stage, and I got her to tell the story that they literally, and rolling in 20 minutes, episode 1, we haven't got a name yet, a can with all the crew put names in a can, and she pulled out Elvira, and she thought it was an awful name, but they had to go, and 5, 4, 3, 2, go. And so thank goodness they changed it, because obviously she now owns the copyright to that name, and otherwise if it was Vampire, she would have been caught to that. So she did a revival of that show in 2010, and I saw the revival of the show, and I went, oh, that's clever. I've been doing a YouTube show where it was quite a big ensemble cast of soap opera based on Crossroads, and I was looking for something a bit simpler where I could just sit in a chair like this and and talk to the camera, basically. So it's a bit like Jack and Nori, but you're introducing the film. So you're being funny and silly, but you're talking, but mainly it's the movie, but you introduce, it's like watching the film with a friend. But this is before DVD commentaries and before, the sort of live streaming. It was like that. And then I did it on YouTube, and then I found a channel in the UK that was showing those movies, and I pitched the show to them. So it's been going, I would have been doing it 10 years next May.
Wow. That is, I mean, it's such a cool concept. I really love it. And I mean, personally, I love the moments where we deviate away from Doctor Who slightly.
For sure, but it all kind of feeds into that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to bring it back slightly.
Of course, yes.
And I'm going to pose a fun question.
Yes.
If you had to host a similar sort of show, but you had to host an episode of Doctor Who for real sort of Hammer horror-esque like greatness, what would you pick? Obviously, I don't want to ruin your DVD collection choice if I'm going a little bit too soon for it, but if yours is different, okay.
what I would host. Well, do you remember they did this on the Horror Channel a few years ago? They had Emily did it. She was she introduced the episodes. I think she's quite heavily pregnant at the time. She's kind of wearing a Dodo Chaplin sort of black and white smocks, like 60s hair thing going on, because I think she's kind of only shot from above here because she's quite heavily pregnant. I think I could, but she was telling me that. I think maybe I've imagined it. But she did a lot of the intros for the various episodes they showed on the Horror Channel back then. That's before Britain. Okay. And I would say it's probably about around 2012, 2013. I think that happened. Around the time of the 50th, I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. So yeah, I was so jealous of that. I was like, oh my goodness, that's a dream job. You know, I'd love to introduce the Doctor Who or Buffy or anything like that. Yeah. I think if I was doing in a horror way, I'd like to do the Seeds of Doom or Horror Fang Rock, that type of era, that kind of sort of mid Tom Baker era. I think
Fang Rock was the first one that popped into my head. Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned
going down the horror route, but
yes, definitely.
I do a few sci-fi ones, but not many. I have done a few, but like films, that is. So, but I think that would lend itself really well, Horror Fang Rock, and I love that. I mean, I love that story. I can still.
Yeah, it's a great story, isn't it?
Funny enough, I think I've just chosen the two stories that kind of scared me as a kid. There was about three. Not much scared me because I was kind of into the special effects of stuff and how it worked quite early. But Horror Fang Rock it's the shot with the Rutan on the beach, the green block, like it's like a shot down onto the beach. That freaked me out. And Genesis, Davros's first reveal. I can vividly remember the very first shot of Davros in whenever that was, 75. That was quite scary because you kind of just see him with the hand going and like the lights and the chair is illuminating him.
Yeah.
And the only thing I've been really like jump scared of is the reveal of the Crinoid in Seeds of Doom, where he's like the guy's sick in bed and he's kind of human with makeup on, and then the butler comes in and goes, "Oh, here's your tea," and it's an actual an Axon painted green going coming at you. That made me, and it's not even the end of an episode, it's mid-episode 4 or 5 or something ridiculous. It's like not even the end of a full Doctor Who end of episode moment. It's just that's just midway. That's how scary Seeds of Doom is.
When I think about it, I love Seeds of Doom. And obviously I just want to mention very briefly, obviously John Challis has sadly just passed away, the wonderful Scorby. As we're recording this, and it's probably a few weeks ago by this point. One of my favourite like human villain characters in Doctor Who. He's so good, so good. So obviously, just wanted to pay my respects there.
Amazing. It's one of all those artists. Isn't it funny? A lot of people I just knew from Doctor Who, and for years later, I kind of just know them for those roles, even though they might have, done so many other things. I always think of them as from the show. It's weird, isn't it? And I think I guess that probably still happens to people now. The kids now that watch it, they probably just know the actors because of the actors, and they might be whoever. But it's funny, isn't it?
It's a weird little skill that I've always had, and I think it stems from Doctor Who. Is that I just recognise so many actors, and most of the time it is from Doctor Who. And I think my girlfriend would love to throttle me every single time I go, they're in Doctor Who, they're in Doctor Who, they're in Doctor Who, that extra there, they were in Doctor Who. I'm constantly just pointing out people in TV shows that are in Doctor Who. I think everyone does that. I think everybody.
I know, it's so scary. I literally did it a few days ago with, oh gosh, what's her name? It's the actress that plays the Sisterhood of Khan in the new series.
Yes.
With her, I was watching something, and my flatmate was suddenly going, "Oh, what's she from?" I went, this sort of Khan. I can't remember the character's name, and it's funny. I think, oh my god, I'm even doing it with the modern show now. It's like she's done lots of other things, but it's just what you've done before.
If you can't remember what something like if you see someone in a TV show and you can't remember what they're from, it's probably Doctor Who, because everyone's been in Doctor Who. Another thing that I want to touch on, just it's something that surprisingly hasn't really come up on the podcast yet, and I know you've been quite closely involved with it, is time fracture, which is a very, very exciting thing. I think there was a bit of time when the podcast was kicking off. I think the reason why it wasn't really mentioned much on my show is that we didn't really know what it was yet, and now it's sort of out there, and it's such a great idea. I mean, just tell everybody at home a little bit about your involvement in the show and what it's all about.
Yeah, isn't it strange? So, to be honest, I didn't really know what it was going to be either.
Right.
And so back in April, May time, I think I'd seen the posters and things, but it's because I suppose they were teasing it, and then then we went into the second, third lockdowns. I think therefore they kind of put the brake on. They think they carried on building the sets and everything, but they kind of stopped. So I think whether if it had carried on with the normal timeline, if it hadn't gone for those lockdowns, I think it would have come out a bit more. So I think they were just in the very, very basic stages of teasing it.
Yeah.
So I'm Bunny Galore quite a lot of the time, but my day job is a hair and makeup artist and what you'd call a wig person, a wig assistant on Western musicals. I also now work in film this year, in fact. So, but people have always asked me over the years, would I want to work on Doctor Who? Not offering me the job, but like, would you want to work on the show because you love it so much? And I always, as an actor or as a hair and makeup person, and I'm like, no, because I would never want to spoil the illusion of it all.
Right. Okay.
My mind might be. I think I might have changed my mind now after this experience. But so weirdly, obviously we were still in lockdown, and I thought what would be cute to come out of lockdown, because I was just stuck here by myself, was to sign on to a full-time show rather than I kind of freelance and I do gigs and I do all sorts of things. I record shows and then I'll go and do a work on a show and for a couple of nights and I'll go and do something else. But I thought, you know what, we're quite nice. I feel like I want something consistent and I want something long-term for 2021 at that point back in April. And then out the blue, I saw someone was asking for someone to come and do hair and makeup on Doctor Who. So there was a head of department, they needed a deputy. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the dream job. Because it's a theatre version. So it's not like the TV show. It's not the pressure of the TV show. It's a theatre version. I didn't know what it was. I thought, is it like an escape room? Because the last event I attended, Reading, I went to the opening night press thing of that. And I thought it was like that. So I was thinking, oh, is it going to be like dummies? What wig-wise, what do you want? And no. Then they got, the time I sent an email off, they had announced the cast for 42, now 43 with Sam Hunt, 43 cast members. I was like, oh, it's an actual show. Oh, I see. But I didn't quite understand the immersive thing. So it's a bit like, but years ago, I used to work at the London Dungeon as a performer. So I when I got there, I went, oh, I get it now. It's kind of, the actors are around you.
Yeah.
And you're in that world. With a dungeon, though, you're kind of going, it's like lots of rooms, but there's one actor in each room. So it's like pass the parcel with the audience. So you go from one room to the next actor, to the next actor, to the next actor, to the next actor, and you go on like a journey. With this, it's much more, there's lots of different actors in the room. Or there might be just one. Or there might be, and you might find a side room with one actor in, or it might, and in the main rooms, there's lots of actors in. But isn't that crazy? I never thought that the Doctor would come along and rescue me from the pandemic. It was really weird. It was really, so I arrived into what you call technical rehearsals and dress rehearsals. And we had, I'd say, about a month of that before it started previewing. Absolutely, this is unreal. I'm getting to go and play in my mind, in my childhood. This is insane. And because it's a theatrical version, so I'm more theatrically based normally, it was as far as that side of things goes. It was just like, wow, this is amazing. It was very weird though, because I've not seen it yet, because we teched, like, there's 4 acts, without giving too much away, there's 4 different acts, but they kind of teched it in the acts or the rooms. So we kind of worked our way backwards. So I've never been on the journey. I've never been through it all. And some of it I've still not seen up and running. I know what people look like, but I've never actually seen the shows because we would never be a part of that. So it was great fun. There's quite a few fans that work on the show that are, you know, in the business, professional actors in the business, and they had the best time dressing as the Cybermen, and that's not too much to give away, you know. But then of all things, so I think we were just about to have the opening night, and then COVID started to really hit any shows that opened early in the West End. Suddenly people were getting pinged, or people were coming down with it in the summer with the Delta variant. So that started, we got off fairly lightly with that, but a lot of West End shows got taken down for whole weeks at a time, like with Hairspray and Prince of Egypt and Joseph, they all got taken down by it. We weren't so bad. We managed to, I think we had a little bit of a blip there, but not too bad. So we're still going. And so the infamous last day was the day of the football, the final, England versus Italy.
Yeah.
And we were finishing slightly early, and they were having screens in one of the rooms in the bar section of the show, which is Act 3, where the cast were going to watch. I was actually going to a friend's house to watch it. Can you believe I was watching it? But as I went to my friend's house, the storm started happening, and I was filming my new series the next day, funny enough, and in this gap I filmed the show, and it's broadcast and it's gone out. 5 episodes have gone out. So unfortunately, so Act 1 and Act 4 are upstairs, but Act 2 and Act 3 are downstairs in the basement, and I think there's an underground river, and it just burst, and it kind of, the water came up from underneath. And all the sets, because it's actually, you know, it's like a proper stage set, so it looks incredible, mind-blowing. The sets are got trashed, absolutely trashed. I mean, they worked so hard to repair it as well, and then 2 weeks later, and we were due to start on the Tuesday, and I was at lunch with some friends on the South Bank, and I remember looking at the tides, going, "Oh, it looks pretty. That doesn't look good out there." And the rain was coming, the thunder was so loud. And then the next day, the same thing happened again, exactly the same thing. So unfortunately now it became problematic, as in how are you going to stop that happening for a third time? How can you continue? You can't continue with just paperwork wise, it became very, I'll let them do the official version of it, but it just became, as you can imagine, that just became, it was like walking, and I did go in backstage to collect things or help tidy as far as hair and makeup and masks go. Yeah. And it was like walking into a theatre fire. You know, like if the theatre had burnt down and you're walking in backstage, you just go, oh my goodness, it's such a shock to the system. They worked so hard to try and get it back on. Having said all that, they had to stop the show. And and I suppose now that it's probably what you'd call a revival happening, that they are opening again, because they did West End Live a couple of days ago. So I think it will be with a lot of new cast. A lot of people have moved on because it's such a big gap. But they do not stop. I'm so impressed with the producers, because they really most people would have been wiped out by this. Completely wiped out. So the fact that they've carried on and they've managed to make it work is incredible. I don't know how they've done it, really. So I'm very excited. And the best thing is, I get to go back and see it now, and I can go and watch it.
Yeah, you can go and watch. I mean, that is, it's absolutely devastating. And the idea, I mean, I haven't had a chance to go yet, so I'm hoping to maybe get down very, very soon.
It is it is amazing. It is. I think I remember watching Act 1. I won't spoil this, but I think I cried about once in Act 1 and once in Act 4 during watching it during dress rehearsals and things, and because it was so like, oh my gosh, I never. It's hard to explain. It's a bit like going to there's a type of theatre called promenade where you kind of walk around with the actors and you're not sitting down. So it's a bit like promenade theatre, but they have like moments of like theatricality and special effects that happen, and there was just some really wow moments in there that you just go, oh my God. Let alone the little clever funny moments that the actors create, organically. It's just mind-blowing. It's hard to describe because there's so much. It's so much going on in there.
It looks like it'd be quite an overwhelming for a hardcore fan, but like in a good way.
It would be.
I think it looks amazing. And
did you ever go to the Doctor Who exhibition at Cardiff? That one that was in Olympia.
I did. Yeah, I did.
So imagine that. Imagine that. The whole thing, not the beginning. I know the beginning was slightly themed, kind of alive, wasn't it? Imagine the entire museum coming alive and chasing you.
That's just my childhood dream. It's just my dreams. But yeah, I mean, I've heard amazing things. So I mean, in terms of the makeup and the wigs and stuff, were you doing like sort of like normal human makeup, or it's a weird question to ask? Or were you doing like monster makeup?
So monsters, monster makeup, yes. And also the weird bit was, so on shows, on musicals, most people are wigged because you've got to change the time period they're from, and they don't want to have the right hairstyles to have finger waves, or you've got to make a cast of 8 look like 180 different people. So the quickest way to do that is to put them in different hairstyles, and every scene, so you'd have long hair, short hair, afro, moustache. It kind of changes what everyone looks like very quickly. But on the Doctor Who show, it was more like being on TV and film, as in you were dressing their hair. They weren't wearing wigs, which is I haven't done people's hair for decades. I've not actual their own hair on their heads. And apparently you have to talk. You can't put 2-inch pins in their heads as well. So they get really grumpy if you do. But so it was a very different way of doing things. And then you would kind of go on set and do checks, which is something you would do on a TV set or a film set. So it was it's so weird. So it's a bit like it's a live event version of a TV show. So if you're in the audience or the actors, you feel like you're in the actual episode. It's happening around you. But as the audience move out, it's like you would be on a TV or film set, which you'd go and do checks on the actors in between. So you're doing alien makeup. There's a few masks. It's not if you look at the 2 girls that were singing, or 3 girls now actually, at West End Live. So I was doing the Silurian makeup, and occasionally I would do, and my Marta, who was in my department with me, she would do the blue makeup, Christinian. So that's how you say it, isn't it? Christinian makeup. Occasionally I would do that too. It's quite a lot. So it was a lot of fun. It wasn't like normal things. It was, and there's obviously some other monsters in there, some infamous iconic monsters. I won't spoil now, but
yes,
I'm sure there's rumors on the internet throughout it appears in there. But that was, I never thought I'd be doing that particularly. That was there's one was one very classic villain who I would look after, but I won't spoil who that is. And I would have to go into that lair, and I've mentioned them already because it was one of the scariest moments as a child. And every time I'd go in there, and it would literally give me chills down the spine. Every time I walk in, because it's dark, it's they're just illuminated by certain lights around them, and it just looks incredible. And that was every day. I was going in there 3 or 4 times during the show, and every time it'd be like, this is, and I know the actors, and they were adorable. But still, they looked utterly terrifying when they start gliding towards you.
It's so exciting, and it's such a, like I said, we're getting a lot of really weird but like really cool Doctor Who content, like with the whole Time Lord Victorious thing, and like they're really pushing the boat out with really cool ideas, and I think this is one of the
I think
best
actually
ideas
I didn't think Time Lord Victorious tied in with this, but I think it does because of the Daleks, I think.
Yeah, I think everything ties in with Time Lord. I think I tie in with Time Lord Victorious somewhere along the way. I think we all do. It's just part of our lives. I'm sure I fit in there somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds so fun. And I think I tweeted about West End Live. Seeing a Silurian sing to thousands of people in Leicester Square is one of the
crazy, isn't it?
Most brilliant, one of the strangest things. I tweeted it without context, and people were messaging me like, you can't just tweet that a Silurian sang in Leicester Square and not give me any context. But I was like, you've got to find out for yourself. Go and find the video because it's brilliant.
Weird.
Yeah.
So when they told me they were the company, some of my friends that were doing that performance were saying that they were doing West End Live, I was like, oh, what? Because like normally you don't have plays that do West End Live. It's normally a musical number because you're in a big auditorium in Leicester Square, to thousands and thousands of people. It'd be a bit weird to do a scene from a play. It's a bit of a low energy thing, and it would be hard to set up in a concert arena type of vibe. So I was a bit like, what are you going to do? And I literally went, oh, I say, of course you could do the girls could do one of the numbers or a couple of numbers from the Act 3, which is the bar scene. And that's what there's more that happens in that bar scene, but a lot of it is the incredible voices of the two actresses involved, and I have to say they are both incredible. Daisy and Ella May are incredible singers. I remember watching them in dress rehearsals, open-mouthed, shocked at how. I was not expecting them to be that great. I was thinking, they're probably actresses. I didn't know them. They're probably actresses that can sing a bit. No, incredible voices. They're amazing. Huge fan. Absolutely. I want to be there when I grow up.
Yes, and that Silurian's got some pipes, definitely. If you're filling out Leicester Square, that's impressive. It's definitely impressive.
I have to say, the West End Live version, the songs were. I don't think that even is quite that doesn't extend to the heights that they do in the show. That was kind of like a mouche bouche taster of what they can do. That was kind of like quite low key compared to what they do in the show. So, but it was kind of, what else would you do, I suppose, in that context? But yeah, it's super fun. It's really, really, I can't wait to go back. So I've left the show now because it was too much of a gap and I had other projects coming up.
Yeah.
But I will never, ever, I never will regret it. I had the best time. Oh goodness, who would ever thought that would happen, that you'd end up working on the show, albeit a live version. It's a bit like doing the Seven Keys to Doomsday or the Curse of the Daleks play, back in the day at the theatre. You'd never think that would have that crossover effect. It was well, they're a great company, such a wonderful company. It's just such a shame it got cut short. But the weird bit is, if you think about it, that always would have happened. The accident with the flooding twice, not once, twice, because maybe the show would have opened early and closed by that point. But if COVID never had happened, the flood still would have happened.
Yeah,
that's the weird bit, because it was so. We were at the height of the Delta variant coming out, so in a weird way, the flooding was a bit like, oh God, here we go. It's like a curse. What's going on?
Yeah,
but that always would have happened because that's a fixed point, isn't it? It's so strange. Talking about fixed points in time, but like if COVID hadn't existed, that flood still would have happened and the show would have still closed. Weird, isn't it? To think
it is, and it like you said, it is a shame because you want to see something that this many people have worked on and this many people have this amazing thing that they've created. You want to see it get its full run. And I hope it comes back with a bang. I hope it comes back. And, thankfully, a lot of people are vaccinated now. We look like, fingers crossed, there's no other disasters. There's no plagues of locusts or frogs or anything that they're going to...
That's literally what I was joking about for ages. I was like, we've had we've had plague, we've had floods. What's next? Locusts. I think also I don't think we all realised how long this year would take to get back to normal. I think in a way, possibly, everything started, the show started, and there's quite a few shows, Hairspray and Prince of Egypt and Joseph and other Western shows. I think they started maybe a little bit too soon because the normality hadn't really come back as an audiences wanting to come into London and see things. There wasn't tourism, there wasn't travel. And it's funny to think that, but you kind of do need tourism to sort of run these shows. I think it's okay now. I'm not so sure it was okay a few months ago because Freedom Day had been delayed. So I think it's the real. I think they must be opening in October, which is an odd time to open, but of course because of the Doctor Who anniversary, it's always a good time to open around that time. So I think it'd be very exciting. I'm sure they've got lots of really cool things planned and stuff.
I'm sure they have. It's very exciting, and we're going to have a very, very short break now. But when we come back, we've got some features, and the first of which is, as usual, the DVD collection. So we'll see you in a minute. So, welcome back to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am still your host, Josh Carr, and I'm still here with Bunny Galore.
Hi, guys.
Hello. So, you all know what's coming. You all know what's next. It is the trusty, faithful shelf that is more that way. I pointed in the wrong place. Zoom is very disorientating. We're going to head over to the shelf and we're going to see what Bunny would like to add to the ever-growing DVD collection.
By the power of Grayskull.
The Unicorn and the Wasp or Love and Monsters?
Which one do you think I'll prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
Well, so as you might have guessed, I am quite the Tom Baker girl, to say the least. And as I just showed Josh, I will show the viewers as well.
Lovely.
My metaphorical shelf is just it's quite a lot. That's like it comes from up there. So I allow myself to collect two things. I collect all the classic action figures, and I collect the DVDs and the Blu-rays. I try not to do anything else because otherwise none of us will be able to move in the house. Oh, tell a lie. Yeah. I have got the season 12 and season 16 Tom Baker scarves, the replica ones, and some Sononauts. But apart from that, I try to keep myself to the figures and things. So no surprise really that the story I'm going to choose is indeed from the Tom Baker era, and it might be a little bit disco. In fact, it's very disco, and it might be very trashy, and it's very much a guilty pleasure, although I don't like that word because everything's a guilty pleasure. But it is my favourite story of all time. It's Destiny of the Daleks.
Oh, wonderful.
So
wonderful.
To a 9-year-old, this is the greatest. A 9-year-old in 1979. I hasten to add, this is the greatest story because it was Tom Baker at the height of his sort of powers. Douglas Adams is a script editor, so it becomes even more fruity and irreverent and sort of sassy than it ever has done before. Davros comes back, and the Daleks are there, and they blow up, and the Movellans look like they're going to a disco, but I don't care because Suzanne Danielle in 1979. Suzanne Danielle was literally everywhere. She was in movies, she was on TV shows, she was like it'd be like having Katie Price come into the show like 10 years ago. Why am I? God, that's a thought. So it is. I of course now viewing it through. Well, actually, I can't see the flaws, but there's a lot of flaws there because the Dalek casings are getting very knackered by 1979, and I just don't. I don't mind. In my head, I make up stories that it's because they've been off having battles and things like that. And I love Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss for like bringing back the Novellans a few years ago as well. I thought it was glorious.
Yeah, one of the best little cameos in all of it. It completely unnecessary.
I think it was Mark's. I'm sure Mark was telling me that was his idea. I'm sure it was. Because it screams of him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just fabulous. So it always will be, and always has to be my favorite story. I know it's not the best story, but that's not always the thing. I think not. Weirdly it's got a bit of a second life now. People see it in a slightly different way than they used to. Because I think possibly in the 80s when Terry Molly had come along. Am I saying that right, Molly? Came along to do Davros, and it came a lot more grittier. I think that era was very looked down upon. I think now, because if you show a modern fan classic Doctor Who, it all looks the same. It looks exactly the same from like 63 to 89. It looks like, apart from black and white and colour, it looks as camp and kitschy. There's less defining eras to the general viewer, I think. So I think and in that way it's become a bit more of a level playing field. Much as we like to think, Seeds of Death and Talons of Wang Chiang or Genesis are like, these moody, gothic, but it still looks like it's shot like Crossroads because of how they make television. So, and I love Crossroads, but it still looks like a 3-walled set, and it's all on multi-camera, and it's 625 line and videotape. So it's all much more level playing field, and I love it dearly.
Yeah, well, these are some of my favourite picks because I always say the classics are going to get in at some point.
No, totally. Exactly.
The big ones are getting in, and we've got some big ones, like we've got Remembrance, and we've got I'm trying to remember some off the top of my head, like we've got Web of Fear. We've got some classics in there.
Which are all I love. I absolutely remember it. I think that is even getting better and better with that is Galore. That was another great era. That kickstart. I think because I've just done season 24 because of the Blu-rays, and I was going. I mean, I really loved season 24 as well because it was a fresh new start. The show was in trouble. I think it should have been shown at an earlier time slot or like a Sunday afternoon type of time slot, because it's not the sort of show that should be going at 7:30 across Coronation Street, but at that point. But it's I think that was that year, wasn't it? But when Remembrance happened, that was like, wow, it felt like it got back so much ground. It's a great story.
Yeah. Well, when I watch Remembrance, because I've done one swoop through of Classic Who, which was last year through lockdown, my first time ever, and I watched it from beginning to end. And like that, I want to go back to some, and Destiny of the Daleks is one. I think I said this last week, because when you're watching it all the way through for the first time, I already know what the classics are, and sometimes I was wishing away stories a little bit, because I was like, I know that Remembrance is next, or I know that Caves of Androzani is next. And I'm really excited to
City of Death is coming up next. After
something like that. So I want to go back to some of these unsung heroes, because as well, we've had back-to-back 2 wonderfully trashy Dalek stories, which I love, because last week Jonathan Carley, the wonderful War Doctor for Big Finish, Jonathan put Death to the Daleks in.
Another great one.
Back to back, we've had some cracking Dalek stories, and we've got some of the great Dalek stories, and then we've got some of these which I'm not saying aren't great. I'm just saying widely regarded.
They're acquired taste.
They are definitely an acquired taste, yeah.
It's amazing with Death to the Daleks. It has a different... It's funny how some of those Destiny, I don't think got shown for a long time, but because Death to the Daleks was the first ever VHS that came out at $9.99, it went to number 1 in the Virgin Megastore charts.
Exactly what Jonathan Carley said. Exactly what Jonathan Carley said. That all of the cheap stories on DVD and VHS have now become so many people's favourites just because they were affordable, which I love that. It's so good that
of all stories, the Revenge of the Cybermen to start the whole range. I still have the original VHS of Revenge of the Cybermen.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Which I brought in 1983, I think for my birthday at the time, which was probably, I think it was about £40 then. Now maybe I got it for 25 in various sales, but or various offers, which was a lot of money in '83.
That is a lot. That is a lot of money. Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? And because it was probably about, I guess, about 50, 60 quid to a child now, which if you're saving up, it would be a lot of money, I guess. But I'll always keep this because of what it meant at the time, and also because it's a really, I love the fact it's got the wrong Cyberman on, and it's the wrong it's like, and it's got the season 18 Doctor and then the 1982 Cyberman. Can't remember. So genius. There's one. I've forgotten who it is. Someone does this on Twitter a lot. They do the various stories as if they've been released, like all the Peter Davison's in this kind of style, and it's just all those stories are loved for different reasons, because when they came out on media, or they repeated as well on BBC Two and things like that.
I love that. Because as a New Who baby, I sort of I sort of missed out on all of this, and I sort of missed out on Classic Who as a kid.
Yeah, it's hard to explain how we didn't have. You had the Target books and you had the Monster books. And you didn't really have, and but I swear that's why you have catch up, is because of my era not having it. So that's why people went off and made it.
Everyone just got so pissed off.
Because they wanted it. So I swear that's why. If I had you, gosh, I'm very glad when I started doing drag, there's no photographs really, let alone now you have to kind of arrive fully formed, otherwise Instagram will remember. And the same with I'd be making TV shows on YouTube if I was 15, or I would be making Doctor Who, stories myself if I was 15 and YouTube had been around. I make shows now for YouTube, but it's more genre based. But it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, I love, but everyone has different things. But now, isn't it weird, because the David Tennant era is kind of in the past. To me, it still feels. I was literally sitting over there on that different sofa, but over there when episode 1 Rose went out in 2005 in a ball, because I was so scared that this, after the Paul McGann TV movie, that the show was never going to achieve. It wasn't going to work. And I was literally in that corner, or the opposite corner of this room, watching the first episode, going, "Oh my God, please work, please work, please!" And of course, it did, and it not only did, it became this huge thing, and then the next day the Eccleston sort of resignation was announced, but that was a bit of a kick in the teeth, to say the least. But the euphoria of that was just incredible. It was just never thought it would happen like that, and then build and build and build and build and build to, But anyone that's kind of lives through that revival era, that those first 4 or 5 years as a kid would be so magical. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. I'd love to have lived through that era as a kid and experiencing it.
Yeah, but then I have a little bit of jealousy of seeing like classics like Genesis and stuff like that as they're going live on TV. I do. I wish I would. I mean, I'm not joking. I can literally, that first entrance of Davros is burnt into my mind, of Sarah Jane coming through the sort of not the caves. What is it? It's the for the wilderness, the wastelands, and she stumbles. It goes from film into videotape. Now I see it as film to videotape, and then it's just all happening as real. It's a real thing. In Davros for the first time. I guess I watched the rest of the story. I don't remember it very clearly, but it was a long time ago. Obviously, I remember it now, but back then I can remember episode 4 of Robot so clearly, weirdly. And then there's lots of gaps, but I don't know if it's because I was watching it and used no way of. I must have read the books later on, so they kind of reburnt it into my mind. I think, particularly with Robot, I remember reading that a lot. So I think that's why. Because I go, what? I must have been watching it all. I think. Why don't I remember
No, quite a lot of it is that's coming back to me, but just the old flashes of it. But it must be because you couldn't watch it more than once unless they were repeated.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Isn't that weird?
I know. Yeah. Well, see, again, that's another way that I was privileged with the era that I grew up in, because I used to make my own Doctor Who DVDs.
Did
like
you?
The whole, the volume sets, which I think I feel like they've come up on a few podcasts recently that I've been listening to, and everyone has just agreed. Why did anyone buy them? They were an absolute rip-off. It was like 20 quid for 3 stories.
Where you
they do like 3 episodes at a time.
Yeah.
And it was really
nice,
weird. Yeah, and I used to make my own versions of them, so I'd like record them onto DVDs and like live off repeats on BBC Three and stuff. And I'd draw my own Doctor Who DVD covers. I'll have to find them. I've got to find them and put them on the Twitter, because they're absolutely terrible. Jared Groves as well, who's been on the podcast before, he did the exact same thing, and our covers are eerily similar. So go and check his out, because they're hilarious to look at.
I have one mad confession as a young teenager. This is really crazy, and I put this on Twitter once. There's no photographic evidence that I can think of where it would be, but for art class, and I must have been that magical age, about 12, 13, I made a full-size chameleon robot out of cardboard.
A full size?
Well, I think it probably started as a mask, and then it was kind of the project.
And then you just carried on. Yeah, carried on.
Out of but I think it was possibly, looking back, that kind of wanting to create costume and kind of monsters. I think it was that kind of, I think it was that. It was trying to do what I've ended up doing, I guess. But at that time, of all things, chameleon. Of all things,
I was going to say, of all characters.
Not K9, but because it was that year, it was that.
K9's smaller as well.
I know.
K9 would have been so much easier.
It would have been so much easier. I think it probably started with a mask, and you had to make a mask, and I'd do chameleon, and then it kind of. And I did love the design of it. Now it's like, what were they thinking? But I think also the character is such a great idea. They should have probably just started with the robot. Yes, the robot doesn't work. Okay, and you just change him to something else, a human version, and just cast an actor that can then change. And he never goes back to the robot form, but they never seem to just think of that. It would just been just go to a guy like Frobisher. I guess like Frobisher does in the comic strips, the Penguin.
Yeah,
like he's stuck in.
I love Frobisher.
It was a great idea.
Yeah, definitely a great idea.
That's one of my secrets is my secret Doctor Who existence. I made a chameleon.
I need you to find a picture. I know.
The worst thing is I have no idea, but it must exist somewhere.
Yeah.
In some
Chameleon 2, the new version. I love this. I love doing this podcast. We went on so many tangents there. We're technically still on the DVD collection, and we've barely spoken about Destiny of the Daleks. But
this is unfortunately, this is my mind. This is just how I work.
Yeah, I love it. It's fine. It's fine. Destiny of the Daleks is in. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of it that I love. I mean, the Davros mask is. Unforgivable, but I mean, they literally
it's even worse now.
It doesn't move.
I've worked with that guy as well. I've worked with David Goodison.
Really?
He taught me to do radio at drama school. He was my radio teacher, and I didn't realise until I think at that point. In fact, we had David Mahoney come in and teach us TV, and we had David Goodison come in and do radio. But I didn't really. Isn't it weird? That it didn't. This is in the 90s, and I think because I perhaps wasn't as clued up about production names as I perhaps am now, that I didn't clock who they were straight away. Because I remember with David Mahoney, I remember talking to him after class, and I was like top of the class, I think. So I was, with camera work and being on camera, because I think I realised pretty soon that I look better on camera than I do in real life. Weirdly, I remember after the class going like, oh my it's so weird. Your name's really familiar. And have you ever done like Doctor Who or something like that? And he went, well, yeah, I've done the most sweetest man going, oh, I've done a few. Have you ever seen such and such and such and such and such? And oh, have you seen Blake 7? I was like, yeah. Oh, my word. How did I not clock that? Oh, he was such a sweet guy.
We've now got another little thing to attend to, which is some wonderful questions from our listeners at home.
Yes.
So we're going to hear the dulcet tones of David Tennant introducing Bloody Twitter.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
So here we go. This is Bloody Twitter, where my strange listeners ask some wonderful questions. We've got some really good ones this week, actually. So first one, my number one hype man on Twitter. I feel like I should pay him. He promotes the podcast so much. What a gem. Cal at generic_tweeting has asked two questions, but I'll let it slide. First one, in your eyes, which would be the funner role to play, the Doctor or the Master?
Interesting. I think we all have grown up wanting to play the Doctor, haven't we? And there's certain roles, like I'll take the role of Joseph in the West End, or wherever it's being performed. Joseph there's some roles which are quite vacuumous that you have to fill with your own personality. So the Doctor is very hard work because it's 95% you. So that's what's tricky, and that's why the casting, actually, they've always, I mean, everybody that's played the Doctor have done a great job with it, because you're filling a void, an absolute void. That, you know, he has to be quite, he or she has to be quite truthful and honest, and there's no edge to them. So you've got to fill that with. So I'm not saying I wouldn't want to play the Doctor. I'm available, but it is hard work, because you've got to fill it with as much personality and charm and charisma that you have. Yeah. It's that's where people go wrong with they think it's easier to do with it. I'm talking about amateur productions now. They kind of think, oh, I just raise an eyebrow and wave a sonic screwdriver. You've got to have so much charm and charisma to do it, and that's so. In other words, all the ladies and gentlemen that have played it make it look very easy. And I don't think it is very easy. So the easier role, in a weird way, is the Master, because you've got a lot more to go on. It's much easier to be evil and be crazy. And so I think I would probably, what I want to play, I'd still say the Doctor, but I think the Master is the easier role, because you've so much, not easier, but a lot more to get your teeth into.
Yes. I think we are long.
That's a very pageant part. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think we are long overdue a drag queen Master. I think it needs to happen immediately. I think
if Lawrence Chaney doesn't beat, Lawrence Chaney doesn't beat me to it first, then I'm there. I'm Tia Coffee, for that matter. And Ellie Diamond came to see the Doctor Who Time Fracture show. Actually, said the sweet. Ellie, she won't mind me saying this. Was the sweetest person, because I contacted Daisy, who plays the Silurian singer, to say how incredible, without any prompting, just to say how incredible she was. So so yes, I'd probably have to fight Lawrence, Ellie, and Tia for the role, but I'm there for the 14th Doctor.
Yes, definitely. Cal's other question, which is a really good question. Also, if you had a TARDIS and it got stuck in one shape, what would you choose? If it had to be stuck in one shape, that we're going to say, we'll rule out the police box. It's not a police box, yeah.
Oh gosh, I kind of presume people will think I'm going to say something rude, but I'm not that type of artiste. But what would I? Oh gosh, I think a carriage would be really cool. As a Victorian carriage, because I love that. Those scenes you get in Sherlock Holmes where they open the door and the step goes comes out.
Yes.
Would the horse be included? I suppose it would have to be a magical horse that's also included. So, or a Cinderella carriage. I'm quite happy to stroll around in a gold carriage. That's quite
Wonderful.
I would love that.
Yeah.
A carriage.
A carriage would be good. Carriage TARDIS, please. Now,
That's
next question is from an old regular on the show, Jamie at Jamie_season7 has asked basic question, but now this might link back to the DVD collection, but usually the answers do differ. What is your all-time favourite story and why? Would you say it's Destiny? Or
no, it probably is Destiny. Well, but there's kind of, in fact, I've watched the other ones. There's kind of three that's up there. It's also Stones of Blood and The Androids of Tara from the year before. Yes. So if you want to ask that question of like, what if you were stuck on a desert island, what would you take with you?
Yeah.
Type of thing. It will be like Stones of Blood, Androids of Tara, and Destiny of the Daleks, I think. To start with, I mean, there's thousands of other stories I'd love to know.
One of my favourites.
Those are my kind of comfort ones.
Yeah, I absolutely love.
Yes, I literally watched Avatar on Saturday. Oh yeah, and I love Stones.
Yeah, Stones is beautiful. Spencer at Spencer S Carter on Twitter has asked. Well, they've said superb
I know
guest.
Spencer. Hi, Spencer.
You know Spencer. Lovely.
Yeah.
I've got a compliment which is quite nice. Superb guests. I know.
Yeah?
Bunny is a legend.
Well, I've paid him to say that, by the way. But he's very, very kind. Yes, very, very sweet.
Yes. The question is, what Doctor do you think has been done a disservice by the fandom?
By the fandom? Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because in olden days, a glimpse of stocking, in olden days, Colin and Sylvester was, I suppose, those things. Even though people loved Sylvester when he was on air, I think when the show went off air, that kind of goodwill slowly went slightly. But, you know, they loved season 25 and 26, but that seemed to evaporate. They kind of, he became a bit of the blamed for the show going off air a bit, I think. I don't think he did at all, but for all those reasons, you know, there's hundreds of videos about. So at the time, Colin and Sylvester, but since Big Finish came along, of course, 20 years ago, those problems have become righted. I think possibly it's Jodie, I would have thought, because I wasn't expecting the visceral division it's caused. Now, whether that's just because of Twitter and people see it on Twitter, and you know what, I get it. I really get it. If you don't like it, I understand, because it's quite a shock to the system. So, completely transparency here. I really had a huge negative reaction to Matt Smith and series 5 when it started. I absolutely despised it on so many levels. On casting, on production, on writing, absolutely. I don't know what it was. I think it's possibly. I think the redesign of the Daleks pushed me right over the edge.
Right. Okay.
that I remember that was the final straw. I think not Mark's script for that episode, but that design. I did. It was Karen Gillingham. I had a huge problem with her. So I get it. I wouldn't go on. I would complain about it to my friends, but I wouldn't go on social media to deride the show. As I wouldn't attack. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I still say this. I was not a fan of that series, and it took me a long time to come back to it. And it's such a surprise and shock when that happens to you, though, for the first time, because you don't expect it. Because I've lived through, so many different areas of the ups and downs and all sorts of around. I never thought I'd come to hate the show as much as I did for a few years. I think, and that's why you hate it, because you suddenly realize you're viewing it as a non-fan. Quite it's unforgivable that suddenly show you that you love has made you view it as somebody that doesn't like it and therefore looks from the outside, and you almost, it's the bubble bursting. It's really weird. It's really weird. So I totally get it, but I would never attack that. And I've kind of gone back and I kind of appreciate some of it a bit more.
Yeah. Well, I had the same thing with probably series 7. I think it's quite a common answer. I think I don't even think it's just because of the show. I think it was just because of a timing thing. I mean, how old would I have been when series 7 came out? What was that? 2013. I was probably about 15, 16, something like that. Yeah. Wow, so I was like, the Matt Smith years sort of aligned with me, being an angsty little shit and not wanting to like anything. So I didn't hate it. I just didn't really vibe with it. I mean, series 7 I really don't like, to be honest. Yeah. But
my version of that is Attack of the Cybermen and season 22. Can you imagine that happening when you're 15?
Right, yeah. Ooh.
That was not the time. Again, looking back, it's fine. I mean, I love Mark and the Rani, and I love Vengeance on Varys, and I love Revelation of the Daleks, by the way. But yeah, Attack of the Cybermen at 15 is not good.
Yes, yeah. But Jodie, obviously we've spoken about it with a lot of guests on here.
Yeah.
There's this is the thing. You've now got different levels of. There's now different factions within the people who don't like Jodie, because there's people who don't like Jodie's era or the Chibnall era because they just don't vibe with it, and they just don't like the writing, or they're not really a fan of the performances, which is absolutely fine. But then you just get this small minority who decide to take it upon themselves.
And it's fine not to like the show.
Exactly.
Fine. It's fine not to like it, as I said. And that's an era. I use that example that was an era I didn't like. It took me a long time. What I did? I went back to Robot, and I watched all of the Tom Baker from the start, because I had to kind of reignite my love of the show. Yeah. So I literally very slowly watched the Tom Baker era throughout all that. And as I say, I look back and there's a lot of great things in there. It's just I don't know if I can say it really, but the problem I had with series 5 was, I think just as it was filming, I got told a lot of backstage stuff that was going on that wasn't very pleasant, and that it was all going to go horribly wrong, and it was horrendous, right. And it really coloured my. I think that's the trouble. So when I watched it, that really kind of put me off, because I think it made me think I was reading so much more into performances and what was happening on screen that you probably wouldn't notice. Now, if that's true or not, I don't think it is. I think I was hearing everybody, if you catch people on a bad day or stuff like that, you should always speak as you find. So until I actually meet these actors, I should really, I'll take it from that really. But yeah, at that point, I think I kind of got put off it by hearing these supposedly true backstage stories, and I don't think they actually were. I think they were just disgruntled people at the time. And obviously it was extremely successful. So I was very like, well, I don't like it. But if somebody else does, that's fine. Of course, I don't. That's your choice. My favorite story is Destiny of the Daleks. I'm fine with that.
Exactly.
So it's kind of, but I understand people being passionately disliking it. However, attacking other people, attacking other performers publicly is no. That's not on.
Agreed. Yes, very firm podcast stance there.
My view of now, I was really excited about Jodie being cast. I don't know her. I've never worked with her, but I have friends that do know her and work with her, and they love her, and that's great. So I take their word for it. They're great people. So, but I've never met her. But I was disappointed with her first season script-wise. Not disappointed. I was a bit like, I kind of wanted it to be, it's nice. Yeah. There's no villains, there's no monsters, there's no threat. If you take the threat away of danger, it becomes a little. There's no peril. There's no. there's no adventure. But Doctor is an adventure series at the heart of it. It's a fun, campy adventure series.
Yeah.
It has moments of horror, it has moments of comedy, but it's an adventure show. And without that, there's no really adventure. So I think they corrected that with season 12. I keep calling them seasons. I'm so sorry. Series 12.
It's all right. Series 12. Yeah.
It's the American way, isn't it? Series 12. They corrected that, and I think from that onwards, you're like, oh, now you've got it. Now you've got what's happening. Does it all work? No, that's not the cast for. I went back and watched a few things because of the time fracture. I went back and watched Kablam actually, and that was actually. Well, the first time I watched it, it was like, oh, that's sweet, but watching it again, you suddenly go, oh, actually, it stands the plot more than I realised. And I loved the Dalek story. I thought they were great. I loved the Master story. I loved the Ruth one. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah,
that was really classy. So there's some moments I've really enjoyed. Overall, I don't think she's had the greatest production around her.
Right.
It looks incredible. I don't know whether it's quite landing as drama should land.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much on a similar level. I like a lot of the stories, but yeah, it's not my favorite era. It's not my least favorite era. I just like it. And to be honest, I'm the kind of Doctor Who fan who's I just appreciate the fact that it's there. To be honest, when there's a new series, I'm just like, I don't even care if it's good or not. I just like the fact that we're getting new episodes of Doctor Who. It's great. Are you excited for Series 13? What are your thoughts of Series 13 coming up? Because as it stands, it might be out. It might be out by the time this comes out. We haven't got a clue because we have no idea when it's coming. So.
Yes. No. Well, very good point. I've actually no idea when it's going out. Actually, I think it's fairly soon, isn't it? I think it's going to be very exciting because considering we're coming out of COVID, I think it's the production's done very well to get anything shot really under those on that scale.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting. So I have to remind myself. So we've got 6 episodes and then a Christmas special. Then
we've got 6 episodes, which is one story over 6 episodes. So classic Who style. Which is quite exciting. There, I think it'll be 6 hour, 50-minute, hour-long episode. So it'd be like a 12-parter essentially, like in classic. Then we get a New Year's special, an Easter special, and then a big regeneration story for the BBC.
That's right. So that will be, I guess, at the end of 2020, 2022, isn't it? So, and then it'll go into. I mean, it's interesting, but then again, it's really not that much different to Matt Smith because he recorded season 7. Is it the one you were talking about earlier? They split it into 2 halves, but originally that he would have filmed that in 2011 or 12, I guess.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning of 2012. So he wasn't contracted again until the end of 2013 when they did, not the end, but mid 2013 for the 50th, which is why was out of contract because he'd actually finished kind of playing the Doctor. Really, it's kind of contract wise, and they had to be brought back to do two more episodes. But viewing wise, because they strung out season 7, I can see the seasons, series 7 for that length of time. It kind of looks like. So I think that's what's happening now because you're running up to the 60th.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the 60th, I think that she probably would have regenerated at the end of these episodes and then come back next year with a new Doctor. But because you're trying to get, I think it's probably better to launch in, if they are going to do this in 2023. Isn't that crazy to do the 60th? It feels like 5 minutes. That's the 50th.
I know.
For me, not for you, I don't think, but for me, it's like that just happened.
Yeah, it's strange for me as well. It does feel like it was like 10 minutes ago that we were going. It literally was. It's such
a big thing. So I don't know if they'll make such a big thing out the 60th. I don't know. They didn't so much with Coronation Street. That was because of COVID, I guess. But some anniversaries are going to be bigger than others, I think. But,
yeah. Well, it looks like they're plumbing for the 100th BBC anniversary instead.
Yeah.
And sort of.
Yes.
So maybe we'll get the celebrations a year early, which is never a bad thing, really, is it?
Never a bad thing.
Nah,
I'm interested to see what happens next. I'm excited. I also, controversially, I don't mind the timeless child thing. I don't mind that too much.
No, me neither. No, I'm sort of here for it because
I don't mind. That's fine. The show's changed before. I mean, I watched the wonderful Dalek 6388 video about the Doctor is kind of human up until the end of 69. Anyway, really, he's kind of written like he's a human from the future. He's not written as an alien. Very much. Sometimes they refer to him, but they kind of still under the illusion that it's the Peter Cushing kind of character, really.
Yeah.
Which is why the movies are that, because that's kind of what people presumed the TV version was. It was just in retrospect, it looks weird. Having said that, I think I would only have done the Timeless Child storyline if the show was ending forever.
Right.
If that was the final ever story, and you were finishing it, I would have done it then. I would have done it as, you know, the episode of Chosen for Buffy when Sunnydale sinks into the earth. That I would have done that as that's the end, because it's more of a grand deal, and you can, you know, it's kind of explains lots of things and opens questions up, but it's a bit hard to come back from that.
Yeah, well, I think
if it's true, if it's true.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We don't know yet. It's not finished. It's literally only just started, to be honest. Like we're like one episode out of it technically, so it's like we're still sort of in the middle of that whole thing. I also just think a lot of Doctor Who fans forget that how often we just ignore things that we decide that we don't like as a collective. Like, we forget that 20 years ago the Doctor was half human, and we just decided to collectively ignore that, and we decided to collectively ignore quite a few things. And if it don't work, we'll just ignore it. I think that's what a lot of people
especially
do.
things like with the War Doctor or the Valiard, these things that were made up for either for a shock value or for a production problem. Which don't really work in the bigger things. It's kind of messy. I think the War Doctor actually creates more havoc than anything else, because that's kind of led to this point, I think, really. Because if you start messing up with the chronological order of the Doctors, then it's a bit like, oh, hold on, what on earth? I mean, it's a cute idea in to solve a production problem, not so cute going forward. So if you can cope with that, it's fine with that's the same problem, really. So but we will see. I can understand where people are annoyed about it, but I think that's fine. It's just, you know, he's not called the Doctor then, he was called something else. It just you know, becomes
agreed. I completely agree. We've got one last question, which is a fun little one from Steve Carruthers at Wigan Steve. Yes.
Hi, Steve.
Steve has asked, pick any Doctor, any companion, and any story. What would be your favourite combination? So he's given his, which would be the Third Doctor and Donna in Pyramids of Mars, which that would be so good. That would be really good.
Oh, I probably would have gone for Donna as well.
You can still go for Donna.
I can still go for Donna. Yeah, I would
allow
love to.
It. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of this story. So it would have to be. I would go for Tom Baker and Donna, because I think that will be. Oh my word, that would be a huge thing. And what story though? I would like to see them do Keys of Marinus.
Nice.
I love Keys of Marinus. I love hence the Keys of, I love the Keys of Time season, but I love that quest kind of. I love a quest story. They need to do more quests. I'm hoping.
Well, I've got a feeling Series 13 might be that kind of
it might well
thing.
be.
Yeah, I've got a sneaky feeling. That's what we're getting.
I love a quest. I think it works very well in any sort of fantasy. So Tom Baker and Donna do the keys.
Yeah.
And actually, I have some. I don't even see it. They have the new box set up there for the action figures.
Oh,
I think
lovely.
from Steve actually. So actually, he got them for me. So thanks, Steve.
Oh, really? No, thank you, Steve. Thank you. I feel like I should pick one. I'm just gonna say 3 random ones. The 5th Doctor.
Oh yes.
The 5th Doctor, Nardole, and stick them in Genesis, which would be utterly dreadful. That would be awful. Imagine, I think Nardole would really get
Yeah, no, I can
caves.
kind of see it. I can kind of. I'm not sure about Nardole, but
Yeah.
I can see 5th Doctor Cave Zandrazani version of the 5th Doctor doing Genesis quite well.
Yeah. Or actually,
Definitely.
I
I love the 5th Doctor. That was like a it's a hard act to follow, Tom Baker.
Yeah, you could get the 5th Doctor and Chameleon in Doomsday, and you could try and play all of the really emotional, romantic scenes.
Oh my god, during the beach scene, I'm still not over that. I'm still not over that. I'm still recovering.
Oh,
like 15 years later.
Yes, it was the first time I ever knew heartbreak. Easily. My childish brain didn't know how to cope with that. Well, that was bloody Twitter. Thank you all for your questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get around to all of yours. But please ask again. We've got many more fantastic guests coming. But we're winding down now. We're coming near to the end of the show. We've got a little whistle-stop tour first, though, because we have to go to a wonderful place. It's somewhere in my house. I haven't found it yet, but it is this magical place where legends live. I don't know. I never know where I'm going with this. And it's called the Corridor of Fame.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting
Dear Sarah Jane?
Do I have the right?
Some people, small, beautiful events is what life is all about.
An anniversary compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really
Every great decision creates ripples. Like a huge boulder dropped in a lake.
But it was a childish dream that made you a doctor. You dreamt you could no more.
I'm not just the type. I'm the last of the kind.
It just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are gone in a moment, like breath on a mirror.
I do what I do because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind.
Love abides in the face of everything.
Right, sorry, my laptop's just gone on no battery, so I've just got to plug it in. 2 seconds.
Oh, it seems to be still working here.
Yeah, I think it's literally just about to die.
Oh, battery-wise, sure.
Yeah, battery, yeah. Just be 2 seconds.
I did one podcast where we were kind of recording it as well. So, but we were recording it individually, like tracks. So, wasn't picture. So my headphones went halfway through that, which was like, of course, carnage. So we had to
God, yeah. I've had some absolute nightmares on this podcast.
It was worth it. They put it all together, like the 3 audios. We had to we transferred them all in, and they lined it. It sounded like we're in a radio studio all together. It was like, I don't know how you've done that.
Yeah.
It was clever.
Yeah, no, I've had a few. I've had a few like an hour into recording, and I found out that it stopped recording like 2 minutes in, and we've had to start all over again, which is quite awkward. Like,
this is
just
hard.
repeating the same conversation.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I tell a lie. I did actually do a YouTube show right in the first pandemic about Mamma Mia, and I interviewed some friends from different versions of Mamma Mia, and I did it via. And then it's the first time I've ever done anything as Martin rather than Bunny Galore, actually. Mainly because I thought it didn't go to a second episode because I think we realised quite quickly that theatre wasn't going to be coming back anytime soon. It was just going to get. It was a bit depressing. It was a bit like, oh gosh, that doesn't want to even. It's like, no, not the time to talk about live theatre in May 2020. It took another long year to come back. So never did episode 2.
Well, hopefully you'll bring it back. That would be great.
It would have been cute, it probably would. Yeah, it would have been a cute. I did Loosely Baked instead. I did a drag queen version of.
Yes, I've seen some of Loosely Baked. Yeah, really love it. Really, really fun.
That was my lockdown check. Trying to make it like multi-camera live TV, which is not easy to do. But great cast. Kitty Scott-Claus, the blonde, is on Drag Race season 3. So that starts tomorrow.
Really, that's exciting.
Thursday night. So
really exciting.
Very, 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 very.
It's a world as an ignorant straight white man that has passed me by, but from what I've seen, I want to get in. I want to jump into Drag Race because it really intrigues me.
Yeah, well, watch the UK ones. Probably not a bad one to do actually. Because I mean, America's amazing. Like I would say, start with season 6, the Courtney Act year. I'd start with. I mean, you might have heard of Courtney, but I would go for season 6 if you're doing the American one. That's at the height of its powers. But the weird thing is, season 4, 5, and 6 really hit it out the park. And then it carried on. It didn't stop. Most shows would win, but if anything, it's become bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's massive. It's massive.
And it's just, and we're only now seeing the effects of how successful season 2 of UK was, because that happened during lockdown early this year. So we're getting this huge, which I love the new kids. It's fantastic. It's basically everything I've been trying to do for the last 20 years, which is kind of gentrify drag. Make it more mainstream, and it's actually happening. So I have no complaints.
That's really cool. Yeah, it sounds really cool. Yeah, like I say, it's just sort of. I mean, I'm hardly the target demographic for it usually, but I want to jump in. I'm in.
Yeah, but that's the joy of Drag Race, really. Yeah. It's that's what's been happening though, Josh. Is people have been discovering it because really, yes, it's drag, but you're not. And it is I think they had one bi guy on season 1 of UK, which I'm not sure who really that was, but yes, it's a gay cast, but it's not. It's more about the human spirit and overcoming, but it is sassy and funny, and it's colourful, and it's kind of like so. And I think in the UK, because of pantomime and dames and things, I think we're far more. It's like it's not such a shock. It's a bit more sexualized, I guess, in America than over here. I think but it is becoming much more like the American style over here now. But watch season 1 and season 2 of UK. It's really funny. It's great. I think you'd appreciate it.
Yeah, it'll take me back to my star turn in school as Widow Swanky. I was the only person who was willing to drag up. Yeah.
Well,
it was terrible. It was terrible.
But it's that power. I don't know how if you discovered this, but when you dress up as a character like that, and it's obviously a different gender to what you are. It's such a strong mask that people start talking to you. This is the secret I found decades ago. People talk to you as if you're a different person. Yeah. And if you can then hopefully if you are talented in some shape or form, you can then, it exaggerates everything that you do. I mean, I could do everything I do as myself. Would it look as interesting? No. Would people be as interested? Well, yes, probably, but not quite in the same way, because I don't know if you can, amount of times I want to give it up and go, oh, this is too much now. But every time I see images or footage, I go, no, that's why, because it just looks so much more interesting.
Yeah.
But do I need it anymore? Probably not. I could probably just do it as myself, but it just looks so much more fun and visually exciting and colourful. So
yeah, why not?
I think I'm stuck with her a few more years yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a curse.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're happy to carry on, yeah, we'll crack on. Yeah, it's just the Corridor of Fame,
right?
And then one last question, which stumps everyone, but I'll save that. So, Bonnie, this is the Corridor. Welcome. We have some legends.
Josh is magical. He's done wonderful things with it.
I know, it's beautiful. Yes, thank you. I love that. I love that commitment. Yeah, we've got some legends in here. Definitely got some legends. We've got all of the Doctors. I stuck Cushing in and Martin and Hurt for good measure. They're in by default. I couldn't leave Peter out. I couldn't leave Peter Cushing out. And then obviously a collection of wonderful people submitted by our wonderful guests.
Fantastic.
Which I would like you to add to. So who would you like to submit to the Corridor of Fame?
I love this question because I think I've been submitted to a few Corridors of Fame myself over the years. I'm still outside. I think I'm still in the allotment outside, but I have been. So I thought this is a really interesting question, and I love the choices that other people have done. But I thought I'd add someone on the production side, and someone that's just as interesting and eccentric and still going. I've seen interviews with her in the last year. So it's June Hudson, the costume designer for seasons 16, 17, and 18. So she did all of Mary Tam's costumes for Romana and Marla Ward's costumes, and more famously, she is responsible for the redesign of Tom Baker's iconic Doctor look into the burgundy costume for season 18.
Wonderful.
Lovely and I just love her style. I love her. I love Keeper of Traken. It's very theatrical and it's very operatic. That's the most beautiful costume design I think the show's ever seen. State of Decay with the vampires is incredible. Let alone all the great costumes they have for the Kamelions, and obviously some budgetary difference. Some Horns of Nyman and Creature from the Pit and Nightmare of Eden are a little bit sort of distillery, but I think that she's one of my favorite people that's been associated with the show, and she gives a great interview. She's still fabulous. She's still rocking it. I googled her earlier, and I hadn't realized she pops up in Class, that not so great spin-off. But she, I love her. And I think it's just such a iconic person to the classic series.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really great pick. I love these picks. The costume design, like you said, the back end, specifically season 18, I think, they really she knocks it out of the park, because I'm trying to think now of the costumes in Warrior's Gate. I mean, I don't know if there's other assistants or other people on the episodes individually. I've never looked that up actually. So there might be people that are there as well with her. I'm just generalizing that was her period of work. So I'm not sure what exactly. I know she designed all the Romana outfits and particularly that Tom Baker. And even though it's such a strange thing to do to change the Tom Baker costume, where it becomes more of a costume rather than a clothes that he's wearing that just happens to have a scarf with it. But I think it's just so beautifully done. It's so elegant that I just I love that costume. I feel like I've said this on a podcast before, but the Doctor always looks good in red. There is not a bad red Doctor Who costume. If it's burgundy, red, I mean, you look at Capaldi, God, he looks good in red.
Yes, his stuff was Capaldi's costume design was I thought was absolutely exquisite for him.
Yeah.
I loved that his silhouette. I thought that was really lovely what they did with him.
Yeah. But yeah, that Tom costume is so lovely. That massive scarf is just.
I think because I think it stretches as well, because I think it starts at a certain length, and by the time they finish filming, it's like it's almost doubled, because you can tell from it's kind of, it should go from the floor up round to the floor and back. By the end of the season, it's like going round several times.
And all, like you said, all of the Romana costumes, like
that incredible white costume that Mary Tam wears in Ribos Operation. Is just starting, and the white, which I think they reuse on Blake 7. I think so.
Really?
I'm not sure which way round that is. I could have got it wrong, but maybe it was designed for Servalan and then Mary Tam wears. But I'm pretty sure it's that way round, that Mary Tam wore it first and then Servalan wears it in season 1 of Blake 7. I could be wrong. But it's so striking. I mean, it's, only we would know that by watching it, obviously. But and I think she did quite a lot of Blake 7 as well. I think so. I could be wrong, but she did quite a lot of Blake 7.
Well,
and I think she gives a great interview. Anytime you see her interviewed, she's like hilarious. She's just
Well, is it because I don't know if in terms of like a lot like interviews with people from Classic Who. Again, it's sort of a thing that's passed me by, because I never had all of the DVDs and stuff. I never had all of the behind the sces when I was younger. So now with these things, the
Blu-rays,
they're
amazing, aren't they?
It's so disorientating.
I know, mine's
collection sets. I'm now getting to.
I think mine's down here, just out of camera. You probably can see them behind me, actually. I think.
Yeah.
Funny in that way. Yes, I was just going to get the Tom Baker ones, and then I completely, so I got season 12, and then that hooked, can't stop.
But yeah, like getting to delve into some of the behind the scenes stuff on there is really cool. And I've got season 18, but I haven't watched
I guess she's on there. Funny if there was a lockdown interview. I've seen interviews with her last year that they did during lockdown, but like this on Zoom. So I know she's still very much going.
Nice.
Not working anymore. She's obviously retired, but still looking. She's just so elegant, and she's just so fabulous what she wears. That's the older person I would love to become. I won't do. I'll be the crazy old lady at a bus stop shouting at pigeons, but I wish. And when I say become, I mean Thursday. I wish I was that stylish and that elegant.
Yeah. Well, June, you are in the corridor of fame.
June has been lovely.
I've run out of drink, but chin.
It's only water, honestly.
June. Well, now we come to the end of the show, which is always a sad time, because I've really, really enjoyed this. It's been really, really fun. But I have one last question before we go that I ask to all of my guests, and it's a stumper. The amount of long pauses that I have to edit out from this question while people think about it is, I must have hours of footage of people just going, So, in a sentence, if possible, what does Doctor Who mean to you?
To me, Doctor Who has always been a magical part of my past and my present. It's been the escape, I think, as a child and still as an adult. It brought me into the business because it taught me about special effects, it taught me about lighting and camera angles and makeup and costume and timing and writing, and gave me that thirst to find out what lies behind the picture, as well as entertaining me. So it's Doctor Who will always be my hero. It will always be part of my life, and I will always love it.
Lovely. Beautifully answered. Beautifully. And not 1 second edited there. Straight away, straight off the bat. Like I
It
said,
is hard when it's not that I have been asked similar questions before, but it's very hard to put it into summarize. It is as a general thing. I mean, it's because I love the show, of course, but I think because it's kind of come into my professional life now, it's kind of but it literally did start me off wanting to be part of the business, because I think it inspires, or whether you carry on into it is a different thing, but it inspires us all to want to write our own stories, to draw a K9 in your textbook, or a TARDIS or a Dalek or whatever. We all kind of become interested in it because I'm not so sure about the new show, and you're a better person to answer that question than me, but as far as the old show, because it was kind of theatrical looking, that's how TV was made then. If you watch Upstairs Downstairs, the original series, you can see the wig lace, and you can see like a 2-inch theatrical wig lace. It's not invisible TV lace, it's theatre lace, and it's on camera, because they say, oh, it doesn't matter, the screen's this big, people won't notice. They do in 2021. That's fine, but so you kind of, it's that joy of seeing how it's put together, as well as totally going along with it as well. So, and that inspires us all, whether you want to write your own Big Finish production or your own YouTube show, or you want to dress up as the Doctor with cosplay. I do a lot of cosplay competitions, and I host a lot of those events at conventions. And not so much Doctor Who, but more horror, but I'm available. Funny enough, I've never cosplayed as a character from Doctor Who, but I think it's because this is kind of I'm all stuck in this, I guess. So, but one day I'll do a Suzanne Danielle as a Mavellan from Destiny.
Lovely. Yes, I'd love to see that. I would love to see it.
Probably look a bit more like Bella Enberg cosplaying as. But it's worth it.
As I said, we've come to the end of the show, and it has been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I've really, really enjoyed it. I just want to give you a moment. Plug away. Wherever you want to plug away. Not that my daft little podcast can boast the almighty Bunny Galore, but please go ahead.
The curse. So if anyone would like to find me, you can find me on Twitter under Bunny Galore, at Bunny Galore, on Instagram as at The Real Bunny Galore, and the website's called Bunny Galore as well. So you usually can Google me. I have a YouTube show called Loosely Baked, which was my lockdown show from last year. And I have I'm appearing live at various brunches, an Oktoberfest in New York, I think, coming up. And I'm hosting some screenings of movies, I think, coming up. We've just done the first one, which is Mrs. Doubtfire, a couple of days ago, which is a bit more on brand. I will be back at HorrorCon next May. I think it's been delayed, unfortunately, a few times. So I'll be back at HorrorCon and other conventions soon. So, but come and say hi. And if you see me in person, come say hi too.
Lovely. And a couple of admin things from me. This is going to be an ongoing saga. I'm recording these well in advance. I should have a website by now. I'm useless. I'm trying to make a website. It was meant to be open for the day episode 1 came out, which is today as we're recording. There might be a website, there might not. Look in the description or check on Twitter. I'm sorry that I can't do better than that. Also, little admin thing, I'm trying to time it in my head as to when this will come out, probably mid to late October, but in a couple of weeks probably I'll be at the Galaxy 4 screening at the BFI in South Bank. So please, if you see me, come and say hi. Feel free. I'm just a normal nerd, so just please come and say hi. I want to meet people there. It's quite exciting. It's the first sort of thing like that I've been to. And other than that, you've been listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at whoknewdwpod. And you can send us an email if you wish at whoknewdwpod@gmail.com. I've not done that for a while and I can't remember it. That's the email. I'm certain. And you can find me on Twitter at Josh Ryan Carr. And the podcast is wherever you get your podcasts. and with video versions on YouTube as well. So Bunny, thank you once again. You've been absolutely wonderful.
Thanks, Josh. I had the best time talking about my favourite subject. Gosh knows, we've been on so many tangents, but that's just how my mind works,
Yes,
unfortunately.
I love it.
Especially when it comes to Doctor Who. So I've had a great time. Thank you for having me, Josh.
Thank you, and thank you all for listening. Have a good morning, evening, whatever it is. You could be listening to this at any time. But yes, thank you. Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.